Welcome to Wick-Splaining. My name is Chuck Wick, and with me I have my brother Paul Wick and our producer Caleb. We are going to be discussing political issues on the local, state, federal levels.
Can I talk?
I'm the host, so I'll do as much talking as I want.
I'm not sure I enjoy that.
Well,
you can argue about who's going to do more talking later. We have a show to do.
We're brothers. We're going to argue.
That's fine, but the people on the other end don't want to hear you guys arguing right now. They'd rather hear about a good conversation that you guys have planned for them.
All right.
You're right, Caleb. All right, Chuck, well, let's get to the topics.
Okay, we have a great show planned for everybody today. Welcome to Wick-Splaining, where we drink and we know things. Today we are enjoying Knob Creek Single Barrel Reserve 9. This is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, 120 proof. I believe it's a little bit strong for me, but it is a good whiskey. What do you feel like on this, Paul?
It's smooth, but man, it'll kick you a little bit.
Yeah,
it's definitely a strong one.
Yeah, 120 proof. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Caleb?
Yeah, even mixing it still had to kick like a mule.
Uh-huh.
It hits you, and it's like, ugh.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a special reserve, but it's a little strong for our taste. You know, maybe we're a little on the wussy side when it comes to whiskey.
Maybe.
It's got a good flavor though too, definitely. So,
I mean, if you want to get drunk, it'll get you drunk.
it will accomplish that. That's for sure. The music from our intro and outro is music from Desolate, a Dayton, Ohio area band. Today we will be discussing the Kyle Rittenhouse case. We will start with the events leading up to the August 25th, 2020 night, where the incident occurred that created this trial. We will discuss the incident that night and the fallout following. Lastly, we will discuss the trial, the outcome, and the possible ramifications of the verdict. To start, we're going to discuss what was the catalyst for the riots, protests that happened on the night of August 25th. So on August 23rd, 2020, a 911 call was placed from a female caller stating that her boyfriend had stolen her keys to her vehicle. The officers were informed that someone at the address had a warrant for their arrest for domestic violence. The alleged victim also said that Blake had sexually assaulted her approximately twice per year. Both Kenosha Police Chief Daniel Miskinis and the Kenosha Professional Police Association stated that the officers dispatched on August 23rd were aware of the pending warrant for Blake before they arrived on scene. After an initial scuffle, Blake walked to the driver's side of his girlfriend's rented vehicle, followed by Officer Shesky and another officer with handguns drawn. Shesky attempted to grab Blake, and when Blake opened the driver's side door, and leaned in, Shesky grabbed him and fired 7 shots towards Blake's back. According to Blake's attorney, 4 of the shots hit Blake. According to Shesky's attorney, Shesky saw Blake put a child in the vehicle as he arrived and heard a woman say, "He's got my kid, he's got my keys." Shesky shot Blake, believing he was attempting to kidnap the kid in the back seat of the vehicle he was entering, and because Blake had a knife in his hand and twisted his body towards Shesky. So these are the events starting on August 23rd with Jacob Blake that was the catalyst for the protests / riots, whatever you want to call it, that happened on August 25th that allowed for this situation with Kyle Rittenhouse to happen. Do you have any thoughts on that, Paul?
I saw that video, and that's one thing I do agree with. Maybe the only thing I agree with some of this Black Lives Matter, against the police, defund the police. I don't agree with any of that, but training. These cops needed a lot more training. Mm-hmm. They got that guy on the ground, and he knocked both of them off of him and stood up. If you have 2 officers, I don't care, female, male, both females, 2 males, you should have enough training. If you get somebody on the ground, you keep them on the ground. Now, this wasn't a large man. He was about average size, I guess you could say.
Right.
But he wasn't this, muscle freak, working out all the time, UFC fighter or anything. This is just a regular dude.
Or he wasn't like 6'6", 300 pounds or something like that. No, he was
5'10", maybe, or
pretty
something.
regular sized guy.
Regular
yes.
body style. And then he went to the car and they shot him. It's like, well, first, what's behind the person you're shooting at? Gun 101. You cannot fire your weapon unless you know exactly where that bullet's going to go. They only hit him 4 out of, what'd you say, 6?
Yeah.
7. Sorry, 4 out of 7. That's even makes it a little worse. I understand. Tensions are high. There's a lot of nerves involved. Training. Those cops need a lot more training.
I agree with that.
But beyond that, I think it was a good shoot. He was a very bad individual, and he did have a knife, and he was coming at the officer. He was going to come at the officers.
Right.
They just stopped him before he did.
Caleb?
My thoughts are kind of on the line of Paul. Obviously they need a lot more training. The thing that a lot of people forget is domestic violence calls are so unpredictable. You have no idea
Very much so.
what you're going to get into. You don't know what the state of mind of each individual is. And you go in there and you're just like, okay, am I going to come home alive? Because obviously tempers are already at a max between the two individuals who are having the scuffle. And in the case of Blake, he was already a known felon. Obviously he was found with a knife, and he even admitted in a later interview he had a knife. But you don't know, as a police officer responding to a domestic violence call, if there's more to it. And you don't know, like we've seen in the news hundreds of times where a domestic violence call might turn into a standoff. You have no idea. And I think that coupled with the ongoing George Floyd issue that happened, obviously which also was in Minnesota, or
Very
Wisconsin.
close.
Minnesota, Wisconsin, both neighboring states. At that time, police were under such a microscope that they were like, okay, what do I do? What don't I do? What's going to help me stay on the job? What's not? And obviously, even now, without all that, even before George Floyd, anytime a police officer was doing anything, there's bystanders with phones recording, putting it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, doesn't matter.
Right.
They're doing everything and everything. And so
many police departments have body cams now too.
They do, and obviously we had body cam from that incident as well, right? Or no?
Well, the the video I saw was bystander.
Okay, bystander.
Right.
Yeah.
It was across the street, so you couldn't see the knife actually,
Right.
but you could tell he grabbed something out of the vehicle,
Right.
and was turning.
Right.
They state that actually, in something I read, Kenosha police do not have body cams right now. It's something that's in their budget, but they haven't been able to afford it yet.
And that's
Another thing about defunding the police.
yeah. That was what I was going to go off of is you have so many people who want to defund the police and not give them the proper funding or the training that they need. And when things like this happen,
You're mad.
They're mad, and it's like, the problem is you want to defund the police, but yet you also want them to uphold the law to a certain standard, but yet you don't want to pay for things to help them. Like,
Right.
it's just, like I said, this was a hotbed catalyst of too many things going on that you knew going into it. At the end of it, something was going to happen.
Right.
And it just happened to be because
And
of
he's just paralyzed, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, he's not dead.
No, he survived the shooting, and
I
yes,
believe
he
he's
is
just
paralyzed.
from the waist down or
And
something.
he is paralyzed, yes.
And it's like,
so he is alive. But I do have to agree that I feel like the body cams could have been very important in this situation. If you watch the video of the Jacob Blake incident happening, you can see where the police officer grabs him as he's reaching into the car. You can see that the chest, because that's where most of the body cams for police officers are mounted, is on the chest of the officer, is facing Jacob Blake and what's going on. So had he been wearing a body cam, we may have gotten an opportunity to see the actual
May have.
actual interchange.
I've seen a lot of body cam footage.
And it can sometimes be a little
crazy. As soon as
crazy.
you draw your weapon or out, that blocks the whole camera. And it should. You're how you're supposed to hold your weapon. Is the exact spot of where most body cams are put on the chest.
Yeah, and I do understand that, but I think that there may have been more footage that we could have seen that would have explained why the officer did pull the trigger that night. That would, also give us an idea of what was going through that officer's mind. What was, what was the possible outcome if he had been allowed to get into the vehicle, grab whatever he was trying to grab, and come at the officer unabated. You don't know what would have happened. The officer is in the situation where he's got to protect himself too. I mean, we want to talk about self-defense, and that's the whole thing about the Kyle Rittenhouse case is self-defense. The officers have a right to defend themselves as well. Just because they're police officers doesn't make them not human, and doesn't make them, doesn't give up their right to defend themselves. So if, that officer saw Blake turn around with a knife in his hand, I feel like it's a good indication of why he pulled that trigger. It's not for me to say whether it was, a legal shot or not. That's for the prosecutors and the police department in that area to make that determination. I feel like he made the determination based on he wanted to go home that night and he wasn't going to allow Blake to take his life.
I mean, in my eyes, it was a self-defense shot. Was it a good shoot, as some people would like to use that phrase? Probably not. As a department, I would have probably, you only have so much money, but training would be top priority for both of those officers because really they had him on the ground first, like I said, and it should never got past that. You have somebody on the ground, it should never, especially an average size man, it should never get past. You should have him in cuffs and in the car. And
I agree. I think police officers need more ground training. They need more grappling training. They need more just hand-to-hand fighting training. I think
I would assume, I don't know this for sure, but I would assume the UFC would be more than happy to partner with police departments and go around.
That would be an interesting thing to do.
Training and help them because that's what the UFC is. It's ground. That's
ground fighting.
Ground fight. Yeah.
They do a lot of ground fighting.
They do some kickboxing. They do some punching. Some boxing. That mostly it's ground.
I was going to say, isn't there a program with the Marines and stuff like that where they do hand-to-hand combat and it's usually with a
depends on where you're at because
all of the
it depends on if you're near a base or not.
The Marine Corps and the Army both train with combatives.
They do.
It's a program to learn how to do hand-to-hand combat in combat situations.
On the other hand of that, it takes a lot of money because you got most of these officers that are going to these trainings are traveling. You have to get on a plane. You have to go to this place. Then you have to spend a week or two training.
Once again, there goes the money from
expensive. You're also paying them. You're paying that officer not to be on his job, but go to training.
But I do feel like that training is important.
Extremely.
It's something that is needed, and it's going to help in situations like this where, given that training and given the idea of how to properly hold somebody down, how to properly arrest them, how to properly handcuff them, and also putting them in a situation where the officer is not going to get hurt and even the suspect is not going to get hurt. Those are things that can be taught. Now, it's not going to work in every situation. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that this is 100% blanket solution to the situation that we're in here. But I think I agree that more training needs to be done so that these officers can try to, work these situations more of a hand-to-hand as opposed to always resorting to a weapon of some sort. And even tasers can be detrimental to someone or even deadly given based on someone's health conditions.
On the other hand of that, a taser, if you're a big guy or on something, if you're on drugs, that taser ain't going to affect you.
It doesn't do anything.
You're going to look at that guy like, you're tickling me. Stop.
Yeah.
We had that happen in Florida, didn't we, where the guy was getting tased and he kept on charging him.
Was that the bath salts guy?
Yep.
Well, bath salts are a whole different story.
Yeah, he was
I saw a video of a guy on bath salts got shot 7 times
And still kept going.
and still walked towards the officer.
Jeez. Yeah.
2 officers actually unloaded and reloaded their pistols before this man dropped. Like, and they hit him every single shot.
Right. It's,
So there's a all different circumstances.
there are extenuating
but
circumstances.
Most of the time, grappling training / just more police training would be sufficient.
Right,
Yeah.
and I agree with that.
Yeah.
So let's move on from the Jacob Blake scenario. Let's kind of move into the night of August 25th that involved Kyle Rittenhouse and the protests / riots that were happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So after police in Kenosha, Wisconsin shot Jacob Blake, a black man, in front of his children, protests erupted in the city, reigniting calls to end to police brutality. Amid those protests were 2 other shootings in which 2 people died and another were injured. The suspected gunman, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse of Antioch, Illinois, is expected to be charged in Wisconsin with first-degree intentional homicide as an adult. So I'm reading this from a timeline that came following the night of those events. So some of this may be a little out of date, but I wanted to at least get the events of that night so that everyone would understand.
I don't like that they kept harping on he's from Illinois, he's not from Wisconsin. Well, since he's technically under 18, and his mom technically had full custody, or at least majority custody. I don't know how the custody works in those states exactly,
Right.
but his dad was from Kenosha. I mean, he lived right there in the community. So at 17. You don't know. He could spend half his time at his dad's. Maybe he went to school in Illinois, but spent all of his summers at his dad's. So to him, to any child or any adult, even spending half a year at one place, you're calling that your home too.
Right.
You may have you think of it as you have 2 homes. These are my places.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a situation, but I can say that in any situation where the city is not that far from it, and for example, like where we live in Troy, Ohio, but a vast majority of the people that live in this area work in Dayton, Ohio. Right. So they're going to travel. It's about a 30-minute drive, about 25 miles one way to get to Dayton from here. But people travel that every day. That's no different in the distance between Antioch, Illinois, and Kenosha, Wisconsin, in that commute that you would have just going to work. And from what I understand, his father worked in Kenosha. I don't know if he lived in Kenosha, but he worked in Kenosha.
Rittenhouse on the stand said that his father lived in Kenosha.
Okay, yeah. I didn't hear that part, but it's a very good possibility. But anyway, going into the events of that night, so at 10:04 p.m., before the shootings began, before Rittenhouse allegedly began shooting, he was seen on video amid a group of armed men who said they were protesting a car shop at the corner of 59th and Sheridan.
Protesting or protecting?
Oh, I'm sorry. It does say protecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Protecting a gas
So anyway,
station.
before Rittenhouse allegedly began shooting, he was seen on video amid a group of armed men who said they were protecting a car shop at the corner of 59th and Sheridan. Rittenhouse is armed with what appears to be a semi-automatic rifle, wearing a green shirt, and can be heard saying, "I'm Kyle, by the way." So there are multiple videos of that night. It's the society that we live in today. People grab their cell phones and start recording. So there are multiple videos from different angles, different people, different things involved of that night. And some of that does actually involve Kyle Rittenhouse. So there are videos of him before the shootings, and then there are videos of him during the shootings and him running and things like that. But we'll get into that as we go here. So about 45 minutes later, another video shows the same person asking law enforcement officers for water as they ride by in a tank. So I saw this video as well. This is another one of those cell phone videos where Kyle Rittenhouse is yelling out to the police officers, "Hey, we could use some water over here," something to that effect. And the officers can be heard saying, "We appreciate you guys, we really do." So, the officers, I think at this point are realizing that they cannot handle the situation themselves.
Not allowed to. I mean, I don't think they couldn't handle it. Just they were being held back, so they couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, they're going on the orders from their superiors, of course. So there's only so much that they can do on their own. So Rittenhouse, still at the same location, gave an interview to Blaze TV before the shooting, in which he said he was protecting from the citizens. He told Blaze TV he and other armed men didn't have non-lethal ammunition. I don't understand this question. I have owned many guns, and my whole family has owned many guns, and we don't carry non-lethal ammunition. I don't know anyone who does. Just normally carry around like sandbag rounds or blanks or something like that.
That's not even a non-lethal. That's less than lethal.
Right.
And that's only for a shotgun anyhow.
Yeah.
So I mean, only cops would carry that in the first place, just to try to subdue somebody to arrest them.
Right.
We're carrying guns to protect ourselves and our rights, not to subdue somebody.
Yeah, and you're not going to go to the store and purchase rubber bullets or something like that. You're going to get, just normal ammunition that you're going to use in a normal target shooting or any type of situation, or like you said, for personal protection. That's why most people want a weapon, is for personal protection. So at around 11:41 p.m., protesters gather. A live stream of the night begins at the First United Methodist Church at 60th and Sheridan, as protesters are gathered at the Ultimate gas station across the street. During that live stream, around the 7:33 mark, gunshots ring out. So at 11:48, the first shooting happened. The gunshots heard accounted for the first shooting of the night at the Bert and Rudy's auto service shop at Sheridan Road. In a separate video that captured the incident, Rittenhouse can be seen running across the lot of the auto shop. A person with a red shirt around his neck appears to be chasing him. After about 30 seconds, protesters can be heard screaming about a shooting, and Rittenhouse is seen appearing to make a phone call before running away. In the background, someone can be heard saying, "I shot somebody." Now, I'm not really sure what was going down at this time. I'm assuming that Rittenhouse was calling the police, calling for help in this situation.
Now, I believe he called a friend.
He called a friend.
He was
okay.
going towards a police line to go get the police.
Right.
And he called, I believe it was a friend, if I remember the actual testimony on the stand. But he was running his initial run was from a fire at the place he was protecting.
Yeah.
And stupid prosecutor, why were you running from a fire? Why were you running from a fire? He's like, it was a fire.
It's a fire, exactly.
Running from a fire. I don't have fire equipment on me.
We learned that in kindergarten.
Right.
If you see a fire, you get away from it.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of point.
I run to it.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're a firefighter with, proper equipment on, you're not going to run to a fire.
And he didn't have. I didn't see a fire extinguisher on him, so
no,
I would.
No, and I wasn't seeing. He wasn't wearing a fireman's outfit.
No. So he was running away from the fire initially. That's when he got into. I don't know if you got to this part yet, and then he got to the first person that he shot.
Yeah, there was shots that rang out. He's saying, "I shot somebody." You can hear that on the video. "I shot somebody," which I've watched that video, and it does. You can hear him say that. The person recording the video then gets closer to the man who had been shot, capturing a graphic view of what appears to be the victim, who was the person chasing after Rittenhouse, bleeding from a gunshot wound to the head. So at this point, Rittenhouse had shot the first, person who was chasing him. I'm not really sure. It's kind of hard in the video to tell what exactly is happening, but you can see the person chasing him, and then as he kind of ducks behind a car, you can hear, the gunshots go off. So from the angle of the video I saw, you can't see him actually shooting the person, but you can see the person then is laying on the ground, and you can see that Rittenhouse comes running out from around the cars and then you can see him get on his phone and he's calling somebody. So that's in the first shooting that happened.
And he has a rifle, a loaded rifle, one in the chamber, and he is running away from what they said was an unarmed person. If he was there just to blow people away, he would have just killed the person. He wouldn't be running away from somebody.
Right.
You know, I mean, he was scared for his life. That's why, and ultimately, he fired and killed that person.
Right. And running away when you have a weapon like that is giving that person the opportunity to not
away.
end up in that situation where you're going to get shot. But when you continue to pursue someone like that, and they're not actively shooting, I mean, I can understand putting your life on the line to try to take down an active shooter. Given, for example, the incident that happened in the Oregon district in Dayton, you have a obviously mentally incompetent person who is firing on a crowd. At this point, I may have, as a person who would want to try to protect people, have tried to subdue that person who's doing that. But at this point, he's not firing the weapon. He's just running with it on his person. So that's giving that person who's chasing him the opportunity to stop chasing him, move away, don't continue this. He does not. He continues. He's chasing Kyle. He's gonna. In as far as Kyle is concerned, his life is in danger. So at this point, he fires the weapon.
Right.
Then we move on to the second shooting. Just a minute later, a second shooting is caught on video. Rittenhouse is seen running in the middle of the street as a number of people attack him. He falls to the ground and is seen firing a number of shots which strike at least 2 people. One person is seen struck in the arm, while the other is seen lying motionless in the street. The crowd disperses after the shots ring out, and Rittenhouse is seen walking backward in the middle of the street alone. So at this point, he's running from the people. He trips and he falls. So at this point, he's probably thinking, I'm going to die. They're going to get me. They're going to beat me to death. So his last resort in his mind at this point is, I'm just going to start shooting anybody who comes at me. And I completely understand that feeling at that time. And he's laying there on the ground. He's worried about his life. He's only 17 years old. He is trying to protect himself. He pulls the trigger.
Well, I mean, even on the stand, and the third person he shot, I believe it was the person he shot in the arm, even stated Rittenhouse did not fire at him until the person that was shot in the arm. I can't think of his name now. Gage Grosskreutz.
Yes.
Gage. I'm not going to be able to say that last name again. So Gage,
one and done.
He aimed his pistol at Rittenhouse.
Right.
That's when he aimed it in the air. He waved it around or whatever else he did. Rittenhouse didn't even shoot him until he pointed his pistol at him. So at 17 years old, already taking a man's life, he still had the wherewithal to not fire at somebody that has a weapon until that weapon was pointed at him.
Right.
So, I mean, I know I was in the military, and most of the people in the military wouldn't even have restrained that far. They just saw somebody with a gun and shot at them.
Right.
Probably wouldn't have hit them.
I know I would have.
Most people I knew in the military, but they would have shot at them.
Right.
So, I mean, without any rules of engagement, without any formal military police training, he still had the wherewithal to not take a man's life, or not even try to, until the weapon was pointed at him.
Yes.
Well, I mean, and the thing a lot of people, a lot of media commentators forget is the man had an AR-15. He didn't have a pistol. AR-15s are meant for long-range targeting. They're not meant for... I mean, you can do close combat, but it is hard.
Usually has a 15, 16-inch barrel.
Right. And so
even the smaller ones are like 13 and a half, 14-inch barrels. So you're still talking about pretty good distance.
Right. And he's sitting there, like Paul mentioned, he had the wherewithal to, okay, I'm going to die. I'm going to act first. Especially after being hit in the back of the head with a skateboard, that a lot of people, oh, it's just a skateboard. It's nothing bad. No, a skateboard can kill you.
Yes.
If you get hit right in the center with where the trunks is located, it can kill you. It can not. It could hurt. It could have given him brain damage or something else. Who knows what?
Right.
I mean, but at the end of the day, it goes to the whole saying of, was it self-defense? Yes. Was it smart self-defense? Probably not, because as we've talked about recently before the podcast, should he have been there? Who knows? It's not our call. Would we have been there? Probably not, because I'll be honest, I'm a coward. If there's a riot happening, I'm going to be probably with Paul right now and in his basement going, let's go, Paul, protect me. But I'm like, once again, though, he had, after being hit in the head, and then obviously being kicked in the head by, we don't know his name other than Jump Kick Guy. That's literally what he was labeled in court.
What the prosecution actually called him.
Yeah, right. I mean, we don't have a name for him. We just know he's Jump Kick Guy.
That prosecution was a whole other story on its own.
Well, we get in that in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute.
But, he had enough common sense and wherewithal and timing to basically be able to protect himself from a guy pointing a gun at him. And a handgun, that close a range, probably could have killed him.
Yeah. And, part that I felt was very interesting was this part right here. So at 11:51 p.m., police arrive. Police arrive at the scene, treat the man who was shot in the arm, driving past Rittenhouse, who walks towards the squad car. A person can be heard shouting, "Hey, he just shot them." Rittenhouse appears to have his hands up as he walks towards the squad car. So I watched this video as well, and you can see where he is. He has the rifle hanging from him with a sling. He's walking towards the car, and he has his hands up. He's walking towards the squad car. The police officers just drive right on past him. So they did not interpret him as a threat.
Right.
So that tells you something about what was going on that night. Here's a man with a AR-15 on a sling hanging from his chest, his hands up in the air, walking towards a squad car, and they literally drive right past him. So I think that should give you an idea of
It was
the
not
chaos.
A peaceful protest.
Right, the chaos that was going on that night. Given any other circumstance, a man walking down the street in that manner would garner a lot of police attention immediately. Given that they did not even pay much attention to him at all, it really describes the chaos and the out of control atmosphere that was going on that night.
Right.
So I think that helps to people to understand what was happening that night and how the events unfolded. So I'm going to hand it over to Paul. Get some more thoughts.
I mean, whether he should have been there or not, I mean, that's a whole. We could do 3 podcasts on whether he should have been there or not. I mean, I think just walking past that, I unfortunately I just walked past that because he was there. Now, would I go to a riot if it was in my local area? Yes. Would I go without no plan and not even know where I'm going to end up? Because that's exactly what he did? Heck no.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to give a little bit of background, we had a discussion prior to recording the podcast about whether Kyle Rittenhouse was in the right being there that night at all, as opposed to does he have the right to go and defend businesses and the city that he knows. And this is the discussion we were having. So that's what Paul's referring to when he's talking about should he be there that night. So go ahead, Paul.
And I truly believe he has every right to do it. So, I mean, at age nonetheless, in our history of our country, we have had much younger military men show up and do greatness. And I just feel like age, I understand everybody wants to harp on age, but if you're capable and you're willing to defend yours and others, I mean, at what age should you really be preventing somebody to, not to do something like that?
And I understand that argument completely. My stance on it is back to the idea of training. And you're talking about a 17-year-old boy who has no law enforcement or military training. I understand he was in some kind of police youth group, and he was a very avid police supporter. But he had never been through a police academy. He'd never even been through basic training for any type of military duty. He has never been through any type of training that helps to understand the way in which to handle a situation like that, the way in which to conduct yourself with a weapon, a way in which to, to be able to be in a situation like that and have the fortitude to stand for yourself and understand when and when not to pull that trigger. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form
that has anything to do with age, though.
The only reason why it has to do with age.
If a riot happens downtown in Dayton and I hand Caleb a weapon, I'm sorry, Caleb, but he has no more training than Kyle Rittenhouse.
No, he doesn't.
He's 30.
Which is
36 years old.
Got no training.
Which is why I tell Caleb to go sit in Paul's basement, like you just said earlier.
I understand.
and wait until we get back, because you and I do have that military training.
I get that, but there's plenty of people that sometimes you just need more men with guns than you do with all have training.
And I understand this is not the zombie apocalypse, though. This is not the shoot first before you die situation. Or it didn't need to be for him because he didn't need to be there that night. And that's my biggest argument about the whole thing is this is, in my opinion, this is completely my opinion, that
my opinion too,
that this is a punk 17-year-old kid who decided that he wanted to go get involved in some shit that he saw on TV. And he grabbed his whatever weapon he could get a hold of. If he got it from a friend or if he got it, I think there's some controversy there. But
it was a friend, yeah.
But he got a weapon and he went and jumped into this scenario, and he had no business being there. He has no training. He has no ability to understand the situation. He's 17 years old. What kind of life experience does a 17-year-old have to be able to be in a situation where he's going to possibly take somebody's life? And what kind of mental, fallout is going to come from that with him now? Yeah. 17 years old, and he took two people's lives and hurt someone else. Well, at the time he did it, he was 17.
Well, he's already admitted he's got PTSD. He's already got nightmares. Mm-hmm. He can't get a good night's sleep because of what happened. I have to laugh. I was laughing when you mentioned the punk kid because that's the same line Geraldo Rivera used on it. He's like, that's just some punk kid who.
I'm definitely not a Geraldo homer, that's for sure.
But
I believe he had all good intentions, but as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yep, right.
Except for and I believe he had every right to defend what he believes is his community, his society, his country, if that needs to be. 17 isn't far off from joining the military and going to fight in a war. I understand there's a little bit more training in that, but when it hits the fan, I understand there is training, but basic training and straight to war isn't a whole lot of training in itself. I get that there's a little bit of training in there. It's better than nothing, but you're OJT at that time. It's on the job training when you're stepping to a war zone.
Of course.
But he didn't go with a plan. That would be the only downside I feel for him is he didn't go with a plan. When the fire happened, and I guess the other guys, we don't even know what happened to the other guys. The first videos had 10, 15, maybe even 20 people out there with weapons protecting these businesses. And he ended up by himself.
Yeah.
Right.
That is where I'm like, man, that really sucks. What happened? Why weren't you running with the other guys that you were with? Even though they may not have known you weren't, didn't know them on a level, but you were with them. They knew you were with them.
Why would you go into a situation like that by yourself anyway? Why wouldn't you take somebody with you that you know has your back?
Was stupid.
I wouldn't go into a situation without you or somebody else that I know would have my back. I'm I mean, even though I have military training, I'm still not. That military training tells me don't go into that situation by myself.
And I get that, but I mean, I understand that he thought that there was, since there was 15 other guys, that he would be okay. He'll just stick with them. Now, and then chaos erupted. He didn't have a secondary plan, which, I mean, I get it. Heck, there's 40-year-olds that don't have secondary plans. Mm-hmm. I mean, age has no excuse. It's not an excuse, I don't think, because there's plenty of people that are 40, 50 years old, and once things go to chaos, it's oh my God, we're all just going to die.
Well, I mean, and I had a discussion with someone else tonight about the same topic, and basically what they were saying was, if you're going to say that Kyle couldn't be there that night, then no one should be there, and I agree with that statement as well. No one should have been there. Those riots should not have been happening.
They should.
Okay, this riot society that we have today is counterproductive to getting through the racial issues that these people want to get through. It's literally continuing the racial issues, not helping to correct them or helping to allow them to be fixed as we go forward. And I feel like
it's the adult version of just throwing yourself on and throwing a fit as a child.
Right. Mm-hmm. I agree. I completely agree.
Just you're doing it in a massively horrible way.
You're doing it in a violent way.
Destructing lives.
Yep.
Well, and businesses, which is lives.
Yeah, that's the thing that...
Not all these businesses are multi-million-dollar corporations that are just like, well, we'll just rebuild.
Right. That's the thing that killed me is, you're well, it didn't really kill me, but you're sitting there and saying justice for Blake, but the man had a rap sheet. He had a warrant. Mm-hmm. He was trying to kidnap his kids. He was in an abusive relationship with his girlfriend, and your answer to it is, let's go burn down that laundromat.
Yeah.
What did that accomplish? It didn't accomplish anything, because that person's...
The business had nothing to do with the situation. Exactly.
All it did was create destruction, and all it did was ruin more lives.
Yes.
All last summer, all we had was these riots and these protests, and none of it accomplished anything.
Yeah, and I don't know the percentage specifically, but there's a lot of those businesses that didn't have the money to rebuild.
Yeah.
They had to go find jobs.
Yeah.
Well, that was it.
Not just that, but like when they had the police shooting in Atlanta, Georgia, since we're talking about that, outside that Burger King. Burger King didn't pay money to have that building rebuilt. They charged the franchisee, and the franchisee's like, how am I supposed to claim this on insurance?
Right.
And he didn't rebuild. So all those people that had the jobs there, 15, 16 people, they no longer have a job. So you didn't accomplish nothing.
You walk past, you drive past these Burger Kings, McDonald's, Taco Bells, and you think, well, that's a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but it's not really.
It's not. Yeah, the name is.
The name, yes,
but it's owned by a franchisee who is a small business owner most of the time.
Maybe that's his only business.
Yeah. Well, we've got one in Troy.
Well, they got a few, but
nonetheless, we've got the one. We have two Wendy's in Troy. They're owned by two different people.
Yeah.
If one burns down, I guarantee you that franchisee is not going to have enough money to pay for it.
I mean, maybe not. I mean, depending on the insurance and everything. And well, actually, right now with the real estate market, he more than likely will not have enough money to rebuild.
Right.
Without at least the franchise coming in and helping.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I mean, it's just the fact that you can't burn down a building because you're mad at somebody else. If you burn down a building, I mean, at least have some kind of beef with that person or that building or that owner or something of that sort,
Right.
I mean, at least to have some kind of a justification that you're doing it instead of just I'm mad.
Yeah.
And then the separation between the actual citizens of Kenosha, Portland, any of the other cities that had these riots. Mm-hmm. The people that burned down the city don't even live there.
No,
majority of them no. They're brought in from other cities. They're part of the rioting crew that goes from city to city and does these kinds of things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been articles, there's been stories that have been written about these rioting people that literally their job is to go from city to city and do these unpeaceful protests and these rioting and cause this to stir and become something that's violent. And they're not even from the area in which they're causing these riots to happen. They're just there for that purpose only, and it's to cause those issues, to go in and to loot, to steal, to do all of these things that are just detrimental to the economy in that area. And those people that are being affected in the long run had absolutely nothing to do with the situation to begin with. And that's the part that just really hurts me going forward. So let's go into real quick just a rundown of the trial.
I was going to say that anyone who's been there, everyone has watched pieces and parts of the trial. So
we know that the trial went on. It started in November 1st. The verdict came down November 19th that he was acquitted on all charges. That's
not guilty for us less than educated people.
Not guilty. Our system is you're either guilty or not guilty. There is no determination of innocent. So right. I also want to make sure that everyone understands that there is no determination of innocent. It is just either guilty or you're not guilty.
Right.
He was found not guilty on all charges.
So he can't be charged again unless they find new evidence.
Correct.
That was not in the first trial.
Now this was state trial. He could be brought up on charges with the
federally. It would be the only way he could be.
Well, maybe federal gun charges, but not for murder because he's already been charged with the state.
Correct.
He can't be charged again for the same.
Not federal. What's the one below state? Like what?
County?
City, but the city referred it to the state, and the reason why the state Bureau of Investigation.
Civil lawsuit. He could be brought up on civil.
A civil lawsuit,
killed,
yes,
right?
Yes. I mean the families of the people that were.
But he don't have any money, and a civil lawsuit's only about money. So
that's definitely true.
You can't get anything else but money out of a civil lawsuit.
Okay.
Right. There's no jail time that's going to be assigned with that.
A lot of times they'll do the civil lawsuit if the prosecution hasn't filed a criminal lawsuit to try to get more evidence out there. That way the prosecution can use that to do a criminal lawsuit. But in this case, since he's found not guilty on all charges, there's nothing to go on with this.
Yeah. And civil lawsuits are taken also after the criminal lawsuit as well. Because the burden of proof in a civil lawsuit is a lot less than in a criminal lawsuit. And this is evident in the O.J. Simpson trial.
Yeah.
He was found criminally not guilty, but when they went to the civil lawsuit, he had to pay.
Right.
You need to pay money for restitution.
We just need to leave the juice alone, man. I mean, the juice.
The juice.
The juice is loose, baby.
I was just using that as an example of a situation where criminally he was found not guilty.
I don't know. He's old, but
I don't know. Is he out of prison now?
Yeah. The juice is loose, man.
The juice is loose. Oh, man.
3 years ago?
Don't spill the juice, okay?
It's been longer than that.
Really?
Well, yeah, he's been out of jail longer than that. He had to do some, 2 years of something. What is it called?
I think he got
probation.
Yeah, he got
2 years probation.
Yeah.
I think he did that in like Vegas or something.
Yeah.
And then
now
then
he's
he
in
was
Florida somewhere.
Well, that's where he got.
That's
where he got hooked anyway because he was.
He was stealing
He's trying to steal his own memorabilia back.
Stealing his own property back.
Yeah, stuff he had sold to somebody, and then he wanted to steal it back.
Well, no, he had to sell it because the civil lawsuit hit him with so much money. He had to sell off all of his memorabilia just to come up with it, and then he tried to go steal it back, which was stupid in the first place. But whatever. We're talking about Kyle Rittenhouse.
I was going to say,
the
we're a little off of it.
The writ on the wall. I mean, the writing on the wall.
The what?
The Rittenhouse.
Right.
Oh,
the Rittenhouse on the wall.
Written on the house. I think he had great intentions. He wanted to protect his community. He wanted to protect everything that was involved. He saw too much rioting in the streets of every major city in the past year, and that he saw all this, rioting and everything, and I just feel like, he had good intentions. He had a horrible game plan. Well, he didn't have a game plan is really what it came down to, and you should never back yourself into a corner like that. If you're going to a riot or you're going to a protection detail, you need to have a plan. You need to go in, hopefully with other people. I understand if you're going by yourself, that's the last resort, but if you need to protect something, I understand you need to protect something. Always have a fallback point. He should have, his mom dropped him off. He should have had her, 25 minutes away or something, walking distance in a secure place to pick him up, and he could have ran there fast. He was a pretty active little kid. I mean, it wasn't like he was just some fat, chubby dude, like I am. But he could have ran down the street to a specific place that his mom could have picked him up, or somebody else could have picked him up, or something like that. You always have to have a fallback and escape route, especially in a horrible situation like these riots are come to be.
Right,
it's chaos everywhere. The police are always pulled back in these liberal cities. Sorry, did I say liberal? Yeah, liberal cities with these horrible liberal mayors that want to appease people and be stupid, but. That's just my 2 cents. I know I'm going to get a little crap for all this, because I believe he had every right to go down there. I believe it's good on him. I believe more people should take up arms and defend themselves and defend their city and defend their property and defend everything. Now, should you take a life to defend property? No. But at that point, that person apparently doesn't value their life either.
Right.
So I'm not too hating on somebody trying to protect themselves or their business by shooting somebody trying to destroy it.
So my 2 minutes, basically, I think the lesson we all learned here was when politics gets involved, stupid stuff happens. I think all of this was escalated beyond mention because of what was going on at that time. At that time, we had the presidential election going on. We had government elections going on. We had all this stuff going on. And we had 2 people who were supposed to be uniters and basically the leaders of our country. One was trying to basically keep us going, and the other one was pandering to the media mob. What made me so sick about the entire thing is before anything got out, you had our now president tweeting saying this is what the face of white supremacists is. Even though he did not shoot or hurt a single person of color. And all that did was just escalate the temperature of everything way past the median it had to be. And I do believe with every instinct in my body, that entire party, Liberal Party, Democratic Party, doesn't matter. There's people in that party that all they care about is raising the temperature. They want to make sure that us as Americans are at each other all the time. And until we sit there and wake up and say, you know what? Maybe we don't need to be doing this, nothing will change. The problem is you had liberal media attacking the cops that shot Blake, that basically they incited the riots. I will not call them peaceful protests because those were riots. When you destroy property, it is considered a riot. It's not a protest. They had people sitting there inciting those riots. I still remember the scene of a CNN reporter behind a burning building. Well, this protest is seemingly peaceful, where there's a burning building behind him. Mm-hmm. And he just egged it on. Mm-hmm. And you had the president, or now president, coming out and inciting with them. And it's like, you as a official should be trying to tone down the rhetoric, not incite it. And I don't think he did his job that he should have done. I still don't think he's done his job, because he came out and said, well, the justice system did a good job, but I'm hurt and angry that the justice system did this. What more do you want? I mean, mm-hmm. his jury of his peers found him innocent, and the prosecution did not do their job or didn't have enough proof to do their job. And my last note is, if the prosecution wants to charge someone on shooting someone, how about you learn how to hold a gun correctly next time? You sat there and held a gun in a courtroom and had your finger on the trigger.
Pointing it at the jury.
Like, I'm sorry, gun 101 is the number one rule is treat every firearm as it is loaded and live.
Yes.
And he did not do that. So
Right.
if anything, he should be brought up on charges for being stupid. And I'm done.
Well, to close this out, my feeling is that the division in this country will never cease until the division in our political parties ends. With this two-party system that we have, there is too much infighting. There is too much turmoil to allow for any type of compromise to happen between them. It causes things like this to happen, where riots ensue, where these people feel like they're justified in rioting because there is a political party out there telling them that it's okay to do this, that this is their right to do this. And in no way do you ever have the right to harm someone else unintentionally when they have not intended to do anything to you. Okay? If you're defending yourself, that's a different story. But if you're intending to just cause harm because you feel the need to cause harm, that's not appropriate. It doesn't matter. It should not be. Doesn't matter what the situation is. It should not be allowed. To go back to the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict, I do agree that at the time that he pulled the trigger, he was acting in self-defense. He was being chased. He had right to feel that his life was in danger, and he acted upon that. So he pulled the trigger, and in that instant, he ended someone else's life. That is something that 17-year-old kid now has to live with for the rest of his life. And I can't imagine that that's something that's going to be easy for him to do. To go back to an argument we were having earlier, I am a person who does not believe that he should have been there that night. He 17 years old. He should have been at home. He should not have been in Kenosha, Wisconsin when there were riots going on. You may disagree with me, as most of my family seems to, but that's my point of view on it. You know, anyone that is in there with the intent to cause violence, with the intent to cause harm, shouldn't have been there. You know, those rioters shouldn't have been there. The people that caused him to have to act shouldn't have been there. No one that night that was involved in that incident should have been doing what they were doing. Okay? I will completely say that from the very beginning. But I will come back to the jury returned with the correct verdict that at the time of what was happening, he did act in self-defense to protect himself. And I won't dispute that. So thank you for listening today. This has been our podcast on Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, that was today's topic. I hope you enjoyed our candid conversation. If you have any comments about our conversation today, please email us at wick.splaining@gmail.com. And even Donnie has something to say.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Subscribe. All right.
And just to wrap that up, you can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.